So we do the opening chant homage. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Three refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. And the five precepts. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Suramiraya majapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, so good evening to one and all, and we are starting this second lesson on dependent origination. Last week was the first lesson, and I do not know how many lessons to go, so we'll just go according to the speed of the audience. Okay, so we've talked a bit on the dependent origination, mostly on the definition of the few terms. Okay, next. Okay, so we stress that dependent origination is actually part of right view, Yeah? So if a person has right view, they should experience dependent origination, not to remember, not to memorize the theoretical sequence. It's an experiential kind of knowledge. More like you get to feel what is clinging, you get to feel what is the release from clinging. So it's not just intellectual kind of discourse. Yeah. So we mentioned this Four Noble Truth. Now, when this is, that is, and the second point, when the rising of this comes the rising of that. So that's the cause of the formation, cause of the suffering, cause of rising. And the third point, when this isn't, that isn't. So when something disappears. And the fourth, when the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. So that's the number three should be in the fourth noble truth, and number four is the third noble truth. Number four is cessation. All right, so these are the 4 points on the dependent origination. So the first two is in the forward order. Next, we talk about these 12 points. So before the talk, Terence was discussing these 12 isn't sort of linked in a circle. Yeah, so he mentioned from ignorance, right? Conditions, fabrication, which is number 2, and the conditions, consciousness, name and form, sixth sense, media, so on and so forth. So last week we discussed that from number 1, ignorance, all the way to feeling. In fact, this is a continuation or request from the series on seclusion. In the topic on seclusion, we talk about this Miga Jala Sutta, what is true seclusion and what is wrong seclusion, right? So the spiritual seclusion is inner contentment of the mind. So the number 1 to number 7, right? Feeling is a natural kind of reflex action. It's happening all the time. You need to see something, you need to hear something. So right now your senses are working. So what project these senses, right? What makes you see with your eye? That's eye consciousness. And what makes you hear with your ear? That's ear consciousness, right? Because there is a thought, mental formation, and then you're able to see, right? So this is the natural reflex action. But then the problem comes with number 8. So number 8 is the deciding factor. So either you react with craving or you choose not to react with craving. So number 8 is the self-inflicted suffering. Number 8 is self-inflicted suffering. So number 9 is the resultant. So if a person crave for something for, I don't know, let's say more than 1 second, then naturally will cling. So it doesn't matter what kind of craving. It can be an anger response. So some people can be angry the whole day because they cling to that anger as though there's no better option. Yeah, because that's it. When they cling to something unpleasant, unwholesome emotion, right? They know it's bad. They know it's bad, but why you still do it the whole day? Because it's clinging, right? You desire for this aversion and you cling it the whole day, right? You cannot let go. There's a clinging. So you do not know how to unlock this clinging, right? So from craving comes clinging. So to remove this clinging, you need to remove craving first. Yeah. So this one again requires right thought. Yeah. Non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. Whereas craving is greed, hatred, delusion. And once you have clinging, then you become that personality. You become an angry person. You become a whatever jealous person. You become a whatever kind of person. You become a greedy person, a lustful person, whatever it is. So you become that personality. So these 12 links is basically every thought moment. So once you, let's say from number 3 to number 5, right? Let's say you look at the screen now, then you have a certain becoming, you become an audience. But let's say you change your contact. Let's say you think of your parents or look at your parents, then you become a child, you become a different personality. And if let's say you have children and you pay attention to your children, then you have a different becoming, you become a parent, right? So this personality is subject to birth, aging, sickness, death. Because you become, there's a sense of exist, right? You become let's say I become a monk. So monk also have monk suffering. If let's say if there's no proper reflection, then monk have monk suffering. Hey, we have so few robes. Hey, maybe we cannot touch money, we cannot do this, cannot do that. So we have lots of suffering also. Yeah. So if we come to think of it, so this is the whole cycle, number 1 to number 12. So that personality also subject to birth, aging, sickness, and death, which there are few interpretation. One is the birth and death is instantaneous, it's very fast, birth and death. Another interpretation is the birth, aging, sickness, and death can be your literal physical aging and death. So whichever stage in life you are, right? If a person is becoming, then you become that particular point of time. Okay, so yeah, there are a few interpretations. So never mind. So anyway, this is we call it the one thought, every thought moment dependent origination, right? So I will stress a lot on this because there are many suttas supporting this explanation. Okay, next. And the reverse order would be, if a person sees ignorance, if when there's no ignorance, then there's no fabrication, no consciousness, no name and form, blah, 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 right? And so on and so forth. So that's how you end this suffering. So this is the Buddhist way to overcome this suffering. So again, I give an example. This is, you cannot take it literally because, for example, if let's say the Buddha, no, or the enlightened monks in the Buddha's time, they got enlightened. But physically, do they experience aging, sickness, and death? Yes, right. So this birth, aging, and death, what does it mean? So if let's say they got enlightened, they have no more ignorance, right? And they have no more this craving. What happens if a person has no more becoming? That means there's no more sense of self, no more sense of I. Because normally we will say, I experience pain, no? I experience sickness, I feel suffering, right? So because there's an I, so there's a receiver. So if a person overcome this sense of self, this ego, then who is experiencing this birth, aging, sickness, and death? Right. So the idea is to uh, overcome this self, but to overcome this self, there's a correlation. This craving comes first. Greed, yeah, craving comes first before becoming. In Western psychology, it's the other way around. The I comes first. Then from that personality, then you generate no, these various desires based on that personality. Right? So Buddhism is the other way around. It's ego first, followed by personality. All right, and next. So we have discussed some of the points last week. Right? What is aging and death? So very straightforward explanation. Don't have to explain. We all know what is aging and death, and what is birth. Yeah? So birth got a few kinds, right? So next. And becoming, so I've explained, so to be technical, there are three kinds of becoming: form becoming, formless, and formless becoming. So they are the three different states of mind. So sensual becoming is our normal sense spheres, right? Seeing, hearing, tasting, and worldly, material kind of existence. And the form becoming is actually the jhanic state, a concentrative state of mind. So a person with form becoming is akin to like the form brahmas. Yeah, so the person require form concentrations, and formless becoming, formless brahmas. And what is this clinging and sustenance? Right. So we talked about a few, right? Clinging to sensuality, clinging, view, clinging, precept and practice, clinging. So last week I didn't explain this very well. Precept and practice, clinging, probably is jumped off guard with a certain question. But anyway, we take it as rites and ritual first. Certain rituals and daily habits. Yeah. Okay, and doctrine of self-clinging. Right? So these are the few kinds of clinging. So if a person becomes a stream enterer, they overcome this. They overcome this self-identity. I am, for example, I am, say, I am a monk, or I am a Buddhist, I am a Singaporean, I am a Malaysian. So when you observe this sentence, I am a monk. So there are two nouns. The first noun is the I, and the second noun is the personality. So a stream enterer will be clearing the second noun. Second noun. The sense of I is still there, very strong. So only an arahant, yeah, can overcome this I. So this is like a partial removing of the self. Yeah. So we overcome identity, right? So a person, let's say they become a stream enterer. So they find happiness, beyond the happiness of this personality. Some people, for example, they, uh, let's say now the pandemic, some people need to be in their career to be happy. Let's say a person become a manager for so many years in a company, then suddenly this pandemic come, then they're out of job, for example. Yeah. So that position, I am a manager, so that manager is like their personality, their personality. So when they cling on to that personality, that is their form of happiness, right? But if a person, how do you call it? overcome this personality view, right? Then, although they're out of job, there's certain unhappiness, but at least they know their option. There is a spiritual happiness. There is a spiritual happiness higher than this happiness based on this personality, right? So, and if person is a manager, then they have these certain rites and rituals. When they go to the office, what they do in the morning, first thing, maybe, I don't know, maybe drink a cup of coffee and whatever. So every day they have certain rituals, certain routine. So these are uh, rites and rituals associated with the personality. So they come hand in hand. This view, clinging to view, personality, and rites and ritual, these three, right? So if a person overcome this view, that means they have no more doubt in the Four Noble Truths, they have spiritual happiness, then they overcome clinging onto this personality for happiness and overcoming the ritual associated with that personality for happiness. Okay, so this is clinging sustenance. And the next one is craving, right? So craving, uh, a lot of them, right? So basically, you can say craving is greed, hatred, and delusion based on the six. Okay, next. Okay, and we talk about feeling, right? Either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling. So you can see things and find it pleasant, and see things and find it unpleasant, depending on what kind of form you see or what kind of sound you hear, and so on and so forth. And contact. So contact is defined as um, based on your sixth sense media, right? So the next point number 5, talk about sixth sense media, depending on your eye and depending on the form. That means the shape on the screen, and then eye consciousness arise. So this is, we're going to talk about next slide. All right, okay, so the next slide, there's 2 points, right? Name and form and consciousness, right? So name and form is nama rupa. So there are 5 things. The 5 aggregates is called name and form. So this feeling, perception, intention, contact, and attention is called the name or the mind, depending on your translation. So name and form can be also translated as mind and matter, right? So feeling, perception, intention, contact, attention, this is mind, yeah? Mental aspect. And form is actually the 4 great elements, the earth, fire, wind, and water, 4 elements. So together they are called name and form. So we always say do this exercise, no? During the karma series, we talk about pointing, where is your attention now? So if you want, you can do that again. No, where is your attention? You don't want to point also can. You have to take note. Where is your attention every moment? Can your attention be at the screen every moment? Right? Are you using one sense only every moment? Right? Are you switching to other senses? Right? So, so when a person is paying attention to something, that is, you're using your consciousness. So the last aggregate, attention, is actually consciousness. So you're paying attention with your eyes, that is your eye consciousness. If you're paying attention with your ears, that is your ear consciousness, so on and so forth. Yeah. So the intellect consciousness is basically your imagination, your thinking. You worry or you plan to do something. So that is intellect consciousness. All right. And next. Okay. And what is fabrication? So we talked this in the karma series. Basically, that is the 4th aggregate. That is the mental formations. Right. Things. Forming all the time. Our attention, why is it running here and there, running here and there? What causes the mind to run to the screen or run to your hearing or run to the contact of a seat, right? So that is fabrication, it's all karma, right? It's the past karma's ripening. And what is ignorance? So ignorance is basically not knowing the 4 noble truths. So that is ignorance. All right, so we've covered the definition of the 12, and we are going to move forward to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to give another example on the suttas on how to apply this dependent origination, how to practice with regard to the dependent origination. So of course, we already covered that in the Mikajala Sutta on the series on seclusion. This is just another example, another sutta. Okay, called the Loka Sutta, the world. Okay, so this is like the introduction. Dwelling at Savatthi is a venue, and the Blessed One, which is the Buddha, addressed the monks. I will teach you the origination of the world and the ending of the world. Sounds like Armageddon, but no. Okay, listen and pay close attention. I will speak. So next. Okay, so what is the origination of the world? So it's basically our world, our worldview. Yeah? Okay, depending on I and forms, there arise I consciousness. Right? So yeah, so depend on your I and the forms, right? The picture on the screen, then I consciousness arise. That means you pay attention to that detail. And same thing, your ear, then there's an ear consciousness to the sound. And same thing, your taste, your touch, and thinking, and so on. And the meeting of the three. So what is the three? Yeah? So the I is one, form is number two, and I consciousness is three. So the meeting of the three is called contact. Right? From contact as a requisite condition comes feeling. So it's natural to feel feeling. Either you find it pleasant, find it unpleasant, or find it neutral. So this is called feeling. And this is the one. From feeling as a requisite conditions comes craving. So there will be craving. Right? That means greed or hatred. We react accordingly to the pleasant, unpleasant feeling, and so on and so forth, which I explained from before. So from craving, conditions, clinging, conditions, becoming, yeah? And becoming conditions birth, and birth conditions this aging and suffering and whatever. So this is the origination of the world. And now we're going to talk about the end of the world. Right, so this is not some doomsday teaching. Huh? Okay, depending on I and forms, there arises I consciousness, still the same. Meeting of the three is contact, still the same. Form contact as a requisite conditions comes feeling, still the same. From feeling as a requisite condition comes craving, still the same. Okay, so what happens is this is the difference. This is the difference. So in practice, if you want to talk about moment to moment practice, the desire part can be reduced. So from the remainderless cessation and fading away of that very craving comes the cessation of clinging. So basically anything before this craving, like feeling, contact, your eye consciousness, you cannot stop. There are practitioners in the Buddha's time, the monks in the Buddha's time. Some of them have wrong views, so they dig out their eye, they try to make themselves handicapped. So by removing the eye, they think, no, they think they have no more contact and no suffering. That's not the way. That's not the way. So the way is to tackle the desire from within, not from the external organs. So from that remainderless cessation of craving, right? Then cessation of clinging, then condition cessation of becoming. Cessation of becoming comes the cessation of birth, and so on and so forth. So no birth and then no death, right? So this is the explanation of the ending of the world. So this is the we call it dependent origination in practice. So I've explained dependent origination twice, right from the beginning, a revision, and from this sutta's point of view, which is starting from craving. And of course, probably the next few sessions, I'll cover different methods on how to overcome right from the start. There's this Venerable Dr. Punaji, the late Dr. Venerable, he came up with an interesting model that talks about cessation from ignorance first. What is the method? So whereas this one, the practical method is about whatever you see, hear, smell, think, taste, and touch, we have to end that craving. So this ending of craving comes from the right thought, either non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. So these are the thoughts. So non-greed will be things like generosity. Like for case when we meditate, we think of impermanence or the impurities of the body, and non-hatred, loving kindness, compassion, so on and so forth. Right. So these are the kind of contemplation and thoughts to overcome this craving. All right, so it's about 9 o'clock. I leave the floor here for questions and the theoretical sharing. Any questions from the ground?
Bante,
Yes.
even if it is the ending of the world, as long as we
Yeah.
have not attained, Buddhahood, we will still come back again and be born again. So throughout the world is no more, then a new world will come to existence, and we will come back and born again, right? So there's no cessation of becoming, in that sense. Can I say so?
Yeah, if a person is not yet enlightened, that means there's still greed and hatred, then it will propel the rest of the chain, yeah, which is all this clinging, becoming, and rebirth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Means that we will still come back again, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. In this sense, there's no cessation of beginning. There's no cessation of becoming.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So it's actually all these the 12 links is making things complicated. So to be simple is still the Four Noble Truth. It's a expansion of the Four Noble Truth. Yeah. Any questions?
Ante, Tian here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, in order to remember the independent origination, right? Sometimes
Mhm.
the language translation variation, right? Sometimes I'm getting confused. Is it okay, Ante, to put some Pali word because at least we have a reference. Oh, you mean that, Because sometimes
Okay.
it's
Next
translated.
lesson. Next lesson.
I'm confused.
Next lesson.
Okay, well, I can still understand it. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Another thing, Ante. Uh, we see an object. We
Mhm.
have the eye base, and then
Yeah.
there is eye consciousness. Then we
Mhm.
see something. There is a seeing. You know,
Yeah.
there is a sound. There is the air. There is the ear base. Then there is the ear
Mhm.
consciousness happening, right? So this
Mhm.
is called the contact, the pasa, right? I
Yeah.
have a question a little bit out of topic, but okay. There's some people, okay, can actually when they hear the sound, there is a vision of colors.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, synthesis, they call it synthesis.
Yeah. Correct.
Synthesis. Or another case is like when with the close of the eyes will
Mhm.
close, and then if there is given a food, for example,
Mhm.
M&M chocolate, right?
Mhm.
And then the M&M is yellow, brown,
Mhm.
and blue.
Mhm.
When they eat it, she knows this is yellow. He
Mhm.
knows this is blue. So meaning he can
Yeah.
taste the color.
Yeah.
What kind of phenomena is this? Because it doesn't, yeah, it is
Yeah.
different from what is explained.
Yeah, some of the Western neuroscientists have been studying this. I forgot what's the term. They talk about the
Synthetism and synthetism. Yeah.
okay, yeah, it's a very long long term that you've mentioned it. So it's got to do with the rewiring of the circuit of the brain
The nerve,
that they
right?
link different sensory perceptions to each other and the neural network. So some people can see, hear color,
Yeah, color. Yeah.
smell sounds, whatever it is. Just so these are the rare few, very few people. Yeah. So
No, I think it's about 5%. I don't
yeah,
know.
very
It's not
small percentage. Yeah.
okay, right?
Yeah. So, but anyway, if you want to talk about application or dependent origination, it's still got to do with ending of the craving. So whatever thing they perceive, right, uh, they still can react with greed or hatred. Same with our normal senses. Yeah.
Okay. I think the message is about craving.
Yeah,
the,
correct.
the,
Yeah.
the source of all suffering. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, Bante.
Okay. Thanks for the interesting share. Okay.
Bante,
Any
there are
other?
some in the chat. In the chat, there are some questions there.
Oh, okay. So there's one from Wai Hong. Which is the most important link to remove of the 12 links in the cycle of dependent origination in order to stop rebirth in future? So again, don't complicate things. I would say the Four Noble Truth, which is the craving, the link on craving, right? I've always emphasized thoughts on non-greed, non-hatred is to overcome greed and hatred. Yeah, so this is the direct way forward. Okay, and the next question from Dean, right? Bante, after many years of working towards cessation of suffering in this lifetime, and if I don't attain liberation and get reborn, then I would have to start over again with not knowing and might even go down the path of greed, hatred, and delusion. How can I make sure I will encounter Buddha's teaching in next lifetime and be on the right path again? Thank you, Bante. Right, so yeah, that's why in many of the Theravada schools now, they aim for Sotapanna, aim for this stream enterer. So once a person has this right view, then it is said it's guaranteed to be reborn as a human or higher. They won't be reborn in the lower realms, right? No more animal, ghost, or hell realms. So maximum 7 lifetimes. Right? So there'll be chance to meet some spiritual teachings and eventually get liberated. So this is the the gist of it.
Bante, I would like to ask, just now the last slide on the end of the world.
Yeah.
Define
correct.
this end of the world. Can you
Yeah.
define that?
Yeah, it's the end of the inner world, the worldview, our perception of the world. It's not the physical world. It's not like end craving, then they start to have volcano and earthquake and and the world starts to crumble and break up. And no, yeah, it's the inner world. Because it's the I that experiences the world, right? So if you see this becoming, see this ego and self, then yeah, the end of the inner world. Yep.
Oh, that is actually liberation. You're talking about liberation.
Yeah, correct.
The
Yeah.
stage of liberation.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Correct. So I always mention this is not a doomsday prophecy kind of teaching. Yeah.
I think Dean has another question in the chat.
Or is it another question? No, it's the same. Yeah.
Is it? I saw something.
Bante,
Oh,
there's
okay. So does it mean that it's possible that in my previous lifetime I was a stream enterer? How would someone know this? Thank you, Bante. Hard to say, yeah. Hard to say, yeah. Might be we call it Puthujjana, a normal worldling, just might happen to chance across Dhamma teaching, possible, yeah. So hard to say. Or even don't have to be stream enterer. Once returner even, so I can either be up or down. Once returner get reborn once, so once in a human realm, yeah.
Okay. For once
Right.
returner, are they like so-called Pacceka Buddhas?
No. Once returner, they
Like Buddha,
yeah, they how do you
the
call it?
last birth.
They reduce greed and hatred to a certain extent, and they still have to come across teachings. Yeah. But you make a good point. Yeah, they might, if let's say we remove the possibility of the bodhisattva path in if let's say the bodhisattva path teaching in Theravada Buddhism is considered post-canonical or later addition, then this non-returner makes sense. If I'm not wrong, this Bante Hai, the late Venerable Bante Hai, I think he mentioned something like this along this line. Our historical Buddha might be some saint long ago, yeah. All right. So again, this is a different angles of perceiving things. Yeah.
Hui Wen
All
has
right.
a question also in the chat.
Wow, 3 questions. Okay, question 1. Understand you mentioned ignorance is ignorance of Four Noble Truths. What's the difference between ignorance and delusion? Okay. Delusion is kind of craving. No, we believe that it derives from neutral feeling. No, we have 3 feelings: pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. So the untrained kind of response to pleasant feeling would be greed. We want, we like it, so we take it. And the untrained response to unpleasant feeling would be hatred. We want to push it away, we want to get rid of it. And the untrained response to neutral feeling is delusion. So a few examples of delusion is permanence, believing in permanence. I will live forever. I will be healthy forever, something like that. Yeah. So this is the delusion. And the second one, if there's no self, what's the thing observing the mind when Bhante instructs us during meditation? Yeah, very good. So again, this is have to do with translation and interpretation. So different schools of Buddhism have different understanding of this concept of anatta. Some people call it no self. Some people say no soul. Some people say non-soul or non-self. And some, like in the Thai forest tradition, like Ajahn Jeffrey, Ajahn Thanisaro, he will say not self. Say very different. Not self is not the same as no self. No self means totally no, right? Whereas not self is denying anything impermanent as the true self. Somehow they still believe there's a true self. So whatever you derive at the end, that means it's like your mathematical homework, or like a chemist or a physicist trying to break down the smallest particle. Then the final product, the smallest thing that cannot be divided anymore, then they say that is the true self, something like that. So like some of the forest masters, they will say it's a pure chitta, something like that. Yeah. So no, different interpretation. And yeah, so of course there is we call this thing called attention, the 5 aggregates. So again, this is very confusing, because in the other sutta, the Sabbasava Sutta, there are 6 different wrong views on self. So like the modern, nowadays, this kind of not self or no self, there's true Buddha nature, there's whatever it is. All these concepts, if a person still has clinging and greed, then that is wrong view. So whether you believe there's a self or no self, it will be a wrong view if there is still greed and suffering. If a person contemplates correctly and overcomes suffering, whatever you call it, whether you call it there's an ultimate self, or there's a no self or non-self, then whatever terms you use is just a term, because mentally you already transcended them. All right. So yeah. So tentatively you just take it there's an observer, right? Because there's a sense of the ego is still there, the sense of I is still there. So until you truly overcome this ego, then you understand. Then you overcome ignorance. Yeah. So number 3, in another class you mentioned to be filial. What should we should uphold family traditions? How can we do that while not clinging into rites and rituals? So very good. So again, there's again a few interpretations of rites and rituals. So let's say like maybe 7th month, this goes festival. Some people like to burn certain offerings to the deceased, to the ancestors, right? So some people say, do not cling to rites and rituals, means totally don't do it. So that would be the exclusivist approach. If let's say your family members don't mind, then it's all right, you can avoid doing it. But let's say it affects the harmony of the family, your family will be unhappy, right? Then you have to try to find moderation. Can you burn in a way that have right contemplation. For example, maybe you can contemplate all these house and money is impermanent. It will one day be withered and destroyed. You can contemplate in this way. Why not? Yeah. Or if you talk about maybe environmental friendliness, maybe you can try to persuade your family members. Hey, we don't do the physical burning now. We try virtual burning. So you create an image, and you create this digital kind of burning or e-payment. Yeah. So this is another way. So whatever it is to make your family happy, right? So this is another kind of moderation. Yeah. So, but ultimately, we talk about the inner form, kind of transcending these rites and ritual, inner kind of rites and ritual. So, if let's say, if you do not mind doing or not doing, then okay, that means your mind is okay. So if there's a reduction in greed and hatred over certain practices, then yeah, then you're okay. Of course, there are certain things which is really wrong. Let's say maybe, for example, human sacrifice. For example, so if that is if it's a no-no and you think it's wrong, right? Then please do not do it. So of course, there's a certain degree to these rites and rituals. Same with the interpretation of clinging to precepts and practices. So if it's killing a life, it's a no-no, then please don't do it. But then again, there are certain occupations which require you to make certain calls. Like let's say operating theater, a surgeon wants to operate a person, and let's say a mother is delivering a child. So if there's a complication involved, then it's either you save one or both die, that kind of situation. Or let's say a police want to defuse a bomb, or a certain moral dilemma. Then they have to make the call, and yeah, so this is gray areas in life. So hard to say, yeah.
One thing I have a question.
Okay.
About craving. Is it all right that if we have a craving to learn the Dhamma, is it all right that we have a craving to be a monk? Aspire, for example, someone aspire to be, let's say, a Buddha. It's also some sort of craving because you are attaching yourself to it, to that ideal.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Right. Yeah. So in the lesson on karma, we call this wholesome karma. Wholesome. So it can be from a normal wholesome karma to a heavy wholesome karma. So all these eventually, if done correctly according to the Eightfold Path, you will reach to a point of saturation. Just like the salt crystal experiment, if you put in, once a person had, let's say, reached maximum number of good deeds, right? Then wholesome karma, you put in additional salt inside, it will crystallize. It will crystallize. So eventually it will transcend, the wholesome karma will transcend, and it will lead to abandonment of the karmas. Yeah.
So is it considered craving?
Initially, yes. Initially craving, yeah.
It is, okay. All right.
Yeah. All right. Okay, and
There's
any
one more question in the
chat. Yeah, Willie, yeah.
Yeah.
From the Facebook. Okay, by Yuming. When Buddhists truly contemplate according to dependent origination, the views of existence and non-existence should not arise. Can Bhante please elaborate more on this? Thank you, Bhante. Okay, so if a person does overcome this becoming, the sense of self, the sense of I, then this question shouldn't arise. Yep. Who is experiencing? If a person has no more ego, no more self, then who is experienced this birth, right? So again, this is the experiential kind of thing. So very hard to explain in theory. The Buddha give example like between the fish and the turtle. It's like trying to explain what is nibbana. So the turtle happens to be able to go on land, climb out of the water, climb onto land, and the fish sees that the turtle disappear. Where did the turtle go? And the turtle, after some time, managed to return to the pond, return to the water, and the fish start to ask the turtle, where did you go? How come you can disappear? And the turtle says, I managed to go onto land. So it's like a metaphor for Nibbana, go to land. So the fish is asking, what is land? Can you swim on land? Do you need to use fins? Do you need to use your gills to breathe on land? And this kind of stuff. So the turtle explained, no, you cannot, it's different. And the fish cannot understand because the whole life is in the water, right? So same thing. So it's not easy to understand in theory. So it's experiential knowledge. So that's why right from the start, I mentioned dependent origination is experiential knowledge. So this theoretical class is just to entertain those who are more theoretically inclined. The whole idea is to emphasize on the experience, the meditation, right? To experience the unclinging, non-desire. All right. So hopefully that answers your question.
Bhante, I have two burning questions.
All right. Okay.
The first question is the three lifetime interpretation of
correct.
dependent origination.
Yeah.
Right. Some school of thoughts, they go with the three lifetime because it seems to fit very nicely the past, current, and the previous. So I'd like to get your views on that. That's my first question.
Okay.
The second question I have difficulty understanding is that after you get to clinging, the natural process seems to be like, you go straight to suffering, because clinging, then you have suffering. So the difficulty for me is understanding how from clinging goes to becoming, and then birth or rebirth, how this number 10 and number 11 fits in. Quite hard to understand. Thank you.
Oh yeah, okay. So from greed, I give an example. Let's say a person is angry, right? I'm sure maybe some of our experience, we might be angry the whole day sometimes. And why do we choose to get angry the whole day? We know it's not good, it's harmful for us, it's a very unpleasant emotion. It's because there's clinging. First, we have a craving, we react with this desire to get rid of something. So we have this aversion that arises. But then because lack of better forms of craving, lack of wholesome craving, right? Then we cling onto this unwholesome emotion, which is, let's say, anger. And we get grumpy the whole day, get angry the whole day. And then we cling onto it. So it's same, it's like any form of addiction. So it's a kind of clinging, and then we become that personality. Then we become an angry person, for example, yeah? So at least hopefully I explained the causations. Yeah. Okay, then you want my view on the three lifetime. Probably you log in on time, but 8:15 there was a short discussion on the Terence asked me, about the three lifetime model. So yeah, some schools of thought they use it. So actually, the next lesson I will go into detail. What are the sutta sources that extrapolated how they snowball and suddenly become these three lifetime thing. In the Theravada Buddhism, it's because of post-canonical ideology. I'm not sure about the other traditions because like in the Tibetan tradition or Mahayana tradition, most of the schools also talk about three lifetime. Right, but I want to talk about the logic behind the three lifetime or the illogic behind the three lifetime. Because if you want to talk about ignorance to consciousness as past life, then they talk about nama rupa being the consciousness entering the womb as conception. So that will be this current lifetime. So if let's say a person get enlightened and they clear ignorance, how do they do that? Do they need to travel to the past? Do they need to time travel to the past life and get rid of the ignorance? So this is the one illogical thing. And if they do get rid of ignorance, then why do they need to get reborn again? Why do they need to go back to the womb to get conceived? Right. So this is the illogic of the 3 lifetime cycle. So likewise for this and the next lifetime cycle on the birth and death. So the next lifetime, does that mean there's no hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching? And this current lifetime, there's no aging, sickness, and death. So no, where's the logic? So the 3 life cycle model is doesn't make sense. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhante. Okay. Coming back to my second question, right? Just now you mentioned becoming. I difficulty understanding the birth part, the number 11.
Okay, so there are 2 kinds of interpretations. So one is the birth. If we look at the Paticca Samuppada Vibhanga Sutta, the analysis of birth, it can be a very subtle birth of the 5 aggregates, or it can be the literal birth. No, that means our literal birth of our bodies. So it can have this kind of meaning as well. So if you want to talk about subtle birth, let's say we do take up a personality, take up an angry person. So that angry person is a kind of birth. Or let's say you're attending my class now, you're a student, so that student is a kind of birth. So now you're born as a student in my class. So it can mean this interpretation, or it can mean you become at any point of your life. If let's say you are, how old are you now, for example? Let's say maybe you're 40, for example, yeah? Then if you take up becoming of a student, so you become a student at 40, for example. So this is the explanation on birth and death. So that would be the, if you want to take it literally, yeah, the birth and death. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, no
think
problem.
more.
Okay.
Not easy.
Yeah, not
Thanks,
easy.
Thank you.
Yeah, but the whole idea is to start working on the craving part to reduce craving, right? So whatever happens next is doesn't affect you so much. And in this talk in the series on the salt crystal, the sutta on the karma, if a person create enough wholesome karma, the mind so immeasurable that transcends, then any other karmas, the bad karmas, the birth, aging, sickness, death, won't affect the mind so much, right? It's as though like a small spoonful of salt, like metaphor for negative karma, put into a huge lake of pure water, of distilled drinking water, and then you stir it, and you taste. No, you can't taste the salt. Something like that. Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so hopefully that, no problem. Yeah. Any other questions on the ground, in the chat room or on Facebook? Okay, if there's no questions, we go for a 5-minute break. Now it's 9:27. I'll see you back on 9:32 for the guided meditation. All right, see you later. Okay, and it's 9:32 and we're back. Turn on. Okay, so now we are starting this guided meditation. So I hope everyone has settled back down. So find a comfortable sitting posture. Make sure the back is upright and your muscles and bodies are relaxed, not tense. Okay, so today's theme is on dependent origination. So we are just trying to observe how feeling results in craving and tension and suffering. Right? It's too long, so I don't want to explain the whole 12 things in every part of the meditation. So I'll just use the 4 Noble Truths in short, right? So hopefully you can experience the dependent origination. So what we're doing is, first part of the meditation is we are going to feel the entire body from head to toe. Whatever sensation that arises, You just take note, yeah? So when that sensation arises in the body, whichever part of your body, it can be your back, and can be your shoulder, can be your neck, your head, wherever it is that your mind wants to run to, right? A strong sensation, it will produce various kinds of feelings, either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And our mind will naturally react to that feeling. You let's say it's a painful feeling, then you'll be like, I want to cure it or overcome it. Right? So there will be a certain kind of desire to want to do something about it. So when there is worry or some form of craving to want to do something about it, then this is where there's certain forms of tension or suffering, which most people are unable to see. But let's say these are considered relatively minor kind of sensation. So now what we want to do is to compare this state of mind after and before and after right thought. Yeah. So once we apply right thought to reduce the craving, we are going to do now is to wish that sensation well and happy wherever your attention is at. Yeah. These sensations in the body, they come and go, just like passerby. So we just treat them as guests. So any form of clinging to the guest, pulling, which is greed, and any form of rejection of that sensation is hatred. So if you want to avoid the both extremes, we apply the middle way, which is the right thought. Is loving kindness is one of them, which is non-anger. Yeah. So we wish all the sensations that come and go well and happy, just like a customer service. Yeah, you just wish all the guests that come and go well and happy. So it requires constant effort to wish it well and happy. Whenever there's a change of sensation, you have to wish it well and happy. Yeah, all kinds of sensation, change of intensity, even if it's in the same spot on the body, right? Just wish it well and happy. Once we stop applying right thought, then the mind will naturally go back to the old programming on reacting with greed and hatred. So it requires a lot of effort, not in a forceful manner, but in a repetitive manner. So how to know whether you're going on the right track is that the mind, when it's lack of clinging, it will settle down. You get more and more calm and more peaceful. So the mind is different from thinking. Very interesting. Eh? The mind can think, intentionally think a right thought, but yet it still can settle down. Very interesting phenomenon. So some meditation instructions or teachers, they will tell you, no thinking, no thinking. Once a person stops thinking, then the mind will either daydream, fantasize, go to sleep, and whatever. Yeah. So in my routine, it's a lot of thinking, lots and lots of right thought. And now we are going to change the dynamics of the mind. We are now trying to focus the mind on one small area, the attention to one small area below the nostril, above the upper lip. And this one can be practiced if, let's say, you still can breathe and you're still physically healthy, then yes, you can do this. If, let's say, the person is, let's say, not feeling well, bedridden, you have the ventilators all over them, then you use the previous one. Can help to settle the mind. So now we are still okay and healthy, and then we feel the breath. So we place our attention on the breath. Are we forcing or controlling? And when there's forcing and controlling, will there be clinging and tension arising? Right, so we always use this Four Noble Truth or dependent origination as SOP to troubleshoot the problem. So what we can do is to diagnose if there's any tension or stress, what is the cause of it? It's either you react with greed or hatred, right? So normally we start off with loving kindness first to soften the mind. So every inhalation, we wish the breath well. Exhalation, we wish the breath happy. So we are not in any way training the breath. We are actually training the mind to reduce this craving. We make friends with the breath. Inhale well, exhale happy. Because in life, you need to, in your daily activities, you need to apply your mind and pay attention to things sometime, right? So this is a form of training. When you apply your attention to a specific object, can you practice detachment? So we start off with the control of the breath. I mean, the control setting, on with the breath. And once the mind is relatively at ease or at peace with the breath, Then we can apply the next right thought, the next counter craving, which is non-greed and non-delusion. So we are going to observe impermanence of the breath. So mentally, you have this mental reminder, rising and falling, birth and death, impermanence, whatever label you want to use. Then you observe the change of sensations of the breath. Whatever sensation it is, so there's simple guidelines, just the 4 elements, you can use it as a guideline. The earth element is any hard or soft sensations, and the wind element, fast and slow movements, fire, warm and cold, temperature, and the water, moist or dry. Right, so if you feel any change of the elements, any sensations, and you take note of this micro birth and death of the aggregates. So birth and death is happening real time all the time. Yeah? Is the mind suffering along with this birth and death? Just like our cells are dying and building all the time. Similarly, the breath or the mind going through many, many cycles of birth and death. So these thoughts of impermanence will help to create detachment. If a person has a combination of both loving kindness and impermanence, it will help the mind to settle even further. So in Buddhism, we always talk about cessation of formation. Yeah. So it's not any kind of formation, but the formation that is formed by desire. So these wholesome thoughts, right, is of non-greed and non-hatred, can seize these unwholesome formations. And then we are now changing the function of cognitive function again, and we are now going to direct the mind in various directions. And we are going to wish all beings in front well and happy. When we direct the mind in a larger area, does the mind still remain calm, or are there more formations? And if there's clinging, how to rectify. Right? So even if you spread your attention to a bigger area, one can also contemplate on loving kindness and impermanence and that bigger area. This is to slowly condition you to transit and use it in your daily life. And then we come back to ourselves, and we are going to think of all beings behind. May they be well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we are wishing all beings on the left well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we wish all beings on the right well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we're going to wish all beings above well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we wish all beings below well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, this time we wish the entire body again from head to toe well and happy. We fill this whole body with loving kindness. It's called mindfulness internally of the body. Right? So a person, wherever you place your attention, there's two choices. Choice number one, you can do it with clinging. Right? You worry about your body, you want to take care of your health, have lots of greed. Maybe like supermodels or bodybuilders, right? Is trying to look nice based on certain desire or greed. Right? It doesn't reduce this attachment. And now we are also paying attention to our body, but how to do it with detachment. Right? So we are training this aspect. So the second choice is with right thought. And eventually we are going to radiate this thought in all the directions, above, below, and all across. Starting with our house, may all beings at home be well and happy. So this mindfulness externally. And again, choose the right thought, how to pay attention outside without stress. Sometimes we need to pay attention outside. When we read the papers, Some people get agitated over the world news. So we start off with practicing this. All beings at home, be well and happy. And we extend the loving kindness to the surrounding neighborhood. May all beings in the neighborhood be well and happy. Then you can extend this loving kindness to your country, wherever you may be. Yeah? May all beings in the country be well and happy. And we are going to extend this loving kindness to the whole world. All beings on this planet be well and happy. So while we wish for world peace, make sure to also check the mind also has inner peace. Yeah? Don't need to get agitated or over clinging when the mind is overextended. And eventually we are going to wish the entire universe, may all beings be well and happy. We try to maintain this mindfulness of loving kindness for as long as possible. So if a person stop contemplating on impermanence, right, then he'll be subject to clinging. And he will be subject to formless becoming actually. Yeah? So if a person always mindful of impermanence, yeah, it's a nice feeling, think of the whole universe, but always keep the right thought and the right effort in mind. So before we conclude the meditation, just another gentle reminder from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. If a person were to be mindful of this boundless loving kindness, be it standing, sitting, walking, or lying down, and this will be the highest conduct. So with that in mind, we can gently open our eyes and the formal meditation, but mentally we're still meditating. Yeah? Okay, so welcome back to Earth. Any issues or questions from the ground? All okay? Yeah, so continually maintain this right thought. And also this is a promotion for 24-hour metta. Yeah? So on the 26th of December, maybe I'll share the link. Chat. Okay, so if there's nothing on, I'll hand over the mic to Terence.
Bante, there's
Yeah.
a question in Facebook
Oh, okay, all right.
from Leong Yu Ming again.
Okay.
The right understanding of dependent original is therefore also wisdom that comes from knowing the Four Noble Truths. That differ in the dependent origin emphasize vertical connections, and the Four Noble Truths emphasize horizontal classification. Can Bante elaborate on this, especially on vertical connections and horizontal classifications?
Yeah, he needs to draw the diagram for me. What's the vertical and horizontal? But anyway, the cause of suffering, we know in the Four Noble Truths is desire, right? And the suffering portion is actually for after this desire, which is clinging and becoming and birth and death. So that is the first noble truth, suffering. So the cause is desire, right? So when we eliminate the cause, which is the right thought and the Noble Eightfold Path, then there will be cessation. So when the desire cease, and the clinging cease, and everything else cease. So hopefully that explains and answers your question.
Okay, that's all, Bante.
Okay, all right.
Bante, hello.
Yeah.
The question was at the beginning of meditation, we were asked to feel the sensation of the body.
Yeah,
But
correct.
if a person has inflammation like the gout on the toe,
You might need to speak a bit louder.
yeah,
It's a
if
bit
we have
soft.
the inflammation of the toe on the leg, can we use meditation method to overcome the pain?
Or overcome the pain in the leg, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, can. This one is, you can feel the sensation in the feet, right? So if it's pain, then most probably, if there's no right thought, then there will be a reaction with anger, aversion, or try to get rid of the pain or try to overcome the pain. So this is the normal reaction, normal response. So the meditation will be applying the right thought. Either you see it as with loving kindness or use impermanence.
What do we have to mention? The passing loving kindness to the pain, or what?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you can start off with loving kindness first to soften the mind, then you can use loving impermanence later.
What do you mean impermanent? What do you mean? You mentioned that the pain is not permanent.
Yeah, the pain has a different intensity, right? So the more you start to view or feel this sensation at a particular spot long enough, you may start to feel various things happening. It's not just the same feeling all the time. There might be different things happening going on.
Thank you, Bhante.
All right, no problem.
Bhante, I have a comment.
Yeah.
I have a different approach on the metta.
Okay.
I think the way that you put it, that we think of, it's a thought, right? Think of the front direction, think of the left direction. Because to me, metta is in emotion. It's not a thought. It's a emotion. It's a love energy there. So I think my approach is not thinking that, but directing that emotion towards that direction, rather than that direction. There's a difference, but because it's the mind is thinking in that way, it is not emotion that is going there, but why the way the thinking there can also relate to emotion. I understand that maybe it's what you mean, but to me, it's
depends on the sensitivity of every individual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, one day, just a comment.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, there's some people, if let's say maybe they are samadhi not strong enough, then it might just end up be a thought, just intellectual thought. But if let's say the more you meditate, then it'll be different. Yeah.
Some people think the Karanya Metta Sutta or the Metta meditation is like a fantasy, like an imagination, because they're using a lot of thoughts, thinking this way, thinking imagine something, It's not the image which is playing, that it's the thinking which is playing, which is not the I don't know. My opinion is not the right way.
Okay.
It's the from the heart, the hadaya from the emotion part. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, correct. Okay. Thanks for the comment. Yeah, so everyone has different depth. Okay. Any other?
There's one in the
from
chat.
Helena.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante, for your wise sharing. Good night, everyone. Bhante, re-craving, is it right to say there is right cravings too? Desiring food in order to survive, helping someone in need. Can you have craving with wholesome intention? Yes. Then you're creating, we call it good karma, yeah? Wholesome intention is good karma. So hopefully that answers the question. So when we meditate at time, maybe some people might feel the mind settling down when we ask you to think of loving kindness or impermanence. So that settling of the mind is gearing towards the cessation. Gearing towards cessation. So this is transcending bright and dark karmas. Right? If let's say a person go along with that desire to want to do good, that is building these good karmas, right? So no problem, yeah. Okay, any other questions? If not, then we end the session. Yeah, there's a closing chant, yeah. Okay, so we chant the Anumodana. Akasata ca bhumata devanaga mahidika punyang tang anumoditva cirang rakantu loka sasanang etavata ca amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabe dewa sabe buddha sabe sata anumodantu Sabha Sabha transference of merits to the departed. Idang me nyatina hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Idang me nyatina hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Idang me nyatina hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Aspiration Imina punya kamena Mame Bala Samagamo Satang Samagamo Hotu Yavani Bana Patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right.
Thank you everyone for joining in.
Thank you.
Bante.
Bante.
Okay.
See you all next week.
Thank you. And
Thank you,
Thank you, Bante.
good night.
Thank
See
you,
you all next
Bante.
week.
Good night.
Right. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bante.
Bante.
Problem.